Every person wants to understand what makes success repeatable. The difference between those who rise and those who remain uncertain is habit. Success is not a secret, it is structure. The 7 habits that follow are not motivational ideas. They are the systems that shape every disciplined and accomplished person. When practiced with consistency, they change how you think, how you act, and how you endure. Each habit strengthens a different part of your foundation. Focus removes distraction. Execution turns intention into results. Emotional control prevents collapse under pressure. Strategic structure sustains direction. Adaptability keeps progress alive under change. Continuity transforms effort into identity. Together, they form the complete framework of success. The discipline to build, the clarity to decide, and the composure to persist. These 7 habits define what it means to live effectively. They do not depend on talent or circumstance, they depend on consistency. Success belongs to those who build habits stronger than their moods. When these principles become part of your system, progress stops being temporary. It becomes who you are. Let's begin. Habit 1. The habit of self-governance. You govern yourself, or you are governed by weaker parts of you. There is no neutral ground. The successful individual draws a hard line between what is felt and what is done. They are not unfeeling, they are unmoved. Emotion exists, but it does not direct. Desire may whisper, but it does not instruct. The axis of control stays internal. The orders come from reason. Self-governance means you do not wait to feel ready. You do not delay for motivation. You do not build your day around comfort. You act from clarity, not compulsion. The inner command is simple. Do what must be done. Do it cleanly. Do it now. The habit begins here. You do not open your phone before you decide what matters. You do not accept invitations before checking your mission. You do not say yes by reflex. You do not leak time through unconscious clicks, tabs, or tasks. Each motion passes through a filter. Does this serve my direction? Governance is not rigidity. It is not about becoming mechanical. It is about becoming precise. When you say you will train, you train. When you set a wake time, you rise. When you define your priorities, you act on them without ceremony. You hold the line. The successful individual trains this as muscle, not mood. Impulse is the enemy of command. Every moment you let an impulse dictate your behavior, you weaken your position. You teach the body that it can interrupt the mind. You train the nervous system to expect indulgence. Every surrender becomes a precedent. Every indulgence creates a habit loop. Every exception teaches the body to disregard the mind. Self-governance cuts this cycle. This habit is not glamorous. It does not impress crowds, but it builds the structure that every other habit stands on. Without it, no success sustains. Without it, no strategy holds. Without it, time bleeds, energy leaks, and identity softens. With it, everything sharpens. The Stoics trained this as a daily ritual. Epictetus taught that the disciplined person must become their own legislator and executor. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that pleasure, ease, and avoidance would attack, and that the rational self must remain at the helm. Seneca warned that the greatest slavery is self-inflicted, when one becomes ruled by urges instead of ruling them. The modern parallel is no different. Success in any field, business, health, creativity, leadership, hinges on the ability to govern yourself cleanly. You cannot build a company or a legacy on impulses. You cannot raise strong children or build a disciplined mind while obeying the whims of comfort. The world does not wait for your feelings to align. It only rewards your execution. Self-governance starts the moment you wake up. You either reach for your mission or your distractions. You either move with command or drift into default. You either rise like a leader or slouch like a follower of appetite. The body resists, the mind protests. You act anyway. Repetition builds the command reflex. Every day you train this, the body begins to listen. Every time you act, despite resistance, your identity sharpens. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop needing external pressure. You stop waiting for inspiration. You become the pressure. This is how self-respect grows. Not through affirmations, through action. Each moment of governance becomes a proof point. I do what I say I will do. The mind learns to trust itself. The body learns to obey. The identity hardens into something immovable. No one sees the inner court where you decide. No one applauds the 1,000 micro-decisions that keep your habits intact. But this is where strength is forged, not in extremes, in repetitions, in thresholds crossed, in urges denied, in commands obeyed without audience. Success begins here. You give yourself orders and you follow them, without delay, without indulgence, without exception. There is a deeper layer beneath the visible decisions. The body does not simply obey reason by default. It is trained, forged, and rewired by friction. Every time you override comfort, you recondition your nervous system to tolerate discipline. Every time you resist temptation, you starve the mechanism that once ruled you. Governance is not one decision, it is a sequence of confrontations. Internal resistance is the weight. Repetition is the training. The nervous system must be retrained through thresholds. You do not just resist the donut or delay the dopamine hit. You hold your hand at the edge of the urge and refuse to flinch. You feel the ache of withdrawal from ease, and you remain still. That pause, that stillness, becomes your new signal. The old circuit, stimulus and surrender, begins to decay. In its place, a new circuit forms. Recognition, pause, assertion. You feel the rise of appetite, and you issue the command. Again, and again, and again. This training is invisible. It takes place in the half-second gaps before a reaction. It happens when the hand twitches toward the phone, when the body begs to sleep in, when the mouth opens to complain. And it is in those moments that self-rule is proven. You do not need violence, you need stillness. You do not need motivation, you need refusal. Self-governance is 100 quiet rejections of weakness. The body will test you. It does not want hardship, it wants patterns. It wants the predictable loop of habit. But you have stepped outside that loop. You are no longer asking for permission. You are issuing directives. That shift, from asking to commanding, is the fulcrum of change. Self-command must invade your routines. Do not let mornings form by accident. Do not let your first movement be dictated by reflex. Establish protocols. Before the sun rises, the body should already know what comes next. Coffee is earned. Movement is non-negotiable. Work begins on schedule, not on mood. You train the nervous system like a soldier trains muscle memory through clean, repeated drills. These systems are not elaborate, they are minimal. The more moving parts, the more potential failures. Simplicity is strength. Define your wake time. Define your first task. Define your daily non-negotiables. Then obey them, without thought, without exception. Execution becomes identity. Identity becomes structure. Every compromise weakens the wall. Every exception becomes an invitation. Do not let appetite write the rules. Do not let fatigue become a justification. You act because it's time. You act because it's principle. You act because you said you would. That is enough. This is what separates those who drift from those who ascend. One lives by sensation, the other lives by structure. One reacts, the other commands. One negotiates, the other executes. The difference is not personality, it is practice, and the practice begins in silence, far from applause, deep in the mechanism of the self. Govern yourself, or be governed by whatever is loudest inside you. The conflict begins quietly. A sensation arrives: tiredness, hunger, tension, resistance. The mind hesitates. The thought surfaces. Maybe not now, maybe later. The pattern is ancient. The body has relied on it for years. But now you witness it. You name it. You hold it in place without obeying it. This is the fracture point. The moment where old identity fractures and new identity is carved. The internal voice becomes clearer the longer you ignore noise. When you delay indulgence, when you refuse the easy exit, the volume of reason increases. It becomes audible beneath the tension. The inner command doesn't shout. It does not argue. It simply remains. You begin to hear it under stress, under fatigue, under pressure. The longer you sit in discomfort without surrendering, the stronger it becomes. This is not inspiration. This is pattern replacement. You are not trying to become someone else. You are unlearning the reflexes that buried who you were supposed to be. Every unacted urge dies. Every rejected impulse decays. Every repeated command becomes a neurological engraving. The loops change. The architecture shifts. The mind obeys itself. Build a personal code, a set of internal laws, not values you write in a journal, but rules you enforce in silence. Wake time, start time, work depth, clean nutrition, hard movement, daily solitude, mandatory completion. These are not preferences, they are orders, given by the self, enforced by the self. Do not explain your rules. Do not negotiate them. Do not soften them to fit comfort. You are not making life easier. You are making the self stronger. The stronger the code, the quieter the chaos. The stricter the standard, the less decision fatigue. You do not spend energy wondering what to do. You act. You do not wonder who you are. You show yourself. The future version of you, clear, focused, relentless, is not found. They are built through these rules. They do not emerge in a breakthrough. They emerge through refusal, through subtraction, through brutal clarity, through invisible work that does not stop just because you don't feel like continuing. Self-governance is not heroic. It is mechanical, but it forges something heroic in the end. The type of person who cannot be moved by weakness, temptation, or excuse. You become sovereign, by law, your own. And yet even with all this, the resistance persists. Not loud, subtle. It creeps in through rationalizations that sound intelligent. I deserve rest. This one time won't matter. I've done enough today. It doesn't arrive in force. It arrives in logic. But that logic is a disguise for weakness. You must strip it of its mask. See it, name it, refuse it. The sharpest failures in discipline come dressed as fairness. The language of excuse evolves. It adapts. It becomes articulate. But its goal is the same: to convince you that compromise is wisdom. It is not. Compromise is corrosion. Once it starts, it doesn't stop. The only countermeasure is clarity. Your internal law must be written so clearly that there is no loophole for logic to crawl through. The rule is the rule. The act is the act. You do not act based on perceived fairness. You act based on identity. Mental fatigue is real, but structure outlasts it. You may feel slow, you may feel fog, but the protocol does not care. It exists outside feeling. You follow it, one step, then the next. Not because you are sharp, but because you are structured. When clarity is embedded into design, execution does not depend on inspiration. You wake, you move, you work, not dramatically, but exactly. This is the difference between systems and stories. Stories require belief. Systems require action. You were taught to wait until you feel ready, to move when inspiration strikes. But that conditioning only deepens dependence. The successful individual does not wait. They initiate, without spark, without spectacle, without a shift in feeling. They move while tired. They execute while indifferent. They hold the line while agitated. They are not steered by emotional weather. They are not built to follow mood. Their code is the compass. Their motion is calibrated to it. Eventually, even the body learns. The same nervous system that once screamed for softness begins to adapt to severity. It stops begging. It stops resisting. It learns the rhythm, and in that rhythm, it finds something rare: silence. No argument, no negotiation, just motion. This is when you know the habit has taken root, when the act becomes neutral, when the rule no longer feels like pressure, when identity no longer requires emotion. It simply acts because it is written into the foundation of who you are. There is an internal shift when action becomes reward, when the very act of obedience feels complete. Nothing added, nothing expected, no one watching, no one clapping, just the motion itself, exact, clean, finished. This is the purest form of reinforcement, internal, silent, uncelebrated, but deep. It cuts grooves into the nervous system. It confirms the structure is real. It makes motion its own return. To execute a task and feel no rise of pride, no craving for praise, no hunger for validation, only the stillness of completion, is a rare discipline. It is also the mark of someone who has matured beyond approval. You do not reward yourself with breaks or sugar or scrolling. You do not condition the mind to expect external pleasure. You let the clean act be its own close, its own perimeter. You mark the win by the absence of chaos. Even satisfaction becomes optional. What matters is that the command was followed, that the architecture held, that no internal sabotage occurred. The rest is wind. This is how discipline matures, from rule to ritual, from ritual to rhythm, from rhythm to identity, and finally, from identity to neutrality, where nothing shakes the order, where nothing is needed to continue. This is when the structure becomes self-rewarding. No badge, no spike of happiness, no applause, just another day of internal alignment, just another motion inside the architecture you built. That is the goal, and it is enough. But self-governance must also hold during storms. It must hold when clarity dims, when emotion floods the chest, when grief, anger, or confusion thicken the air. Discipline means little if it vanishes under pressure. This is where the habit is either proven or exposed. There will be days when logic feels unreachable, days when the pulse races and breath shortens, when someone dies, when betrayal strikes, when the weight of loss feels cellular. In these moments, the body seeks escape. The mind hunts for relief. But the one who is trained does not follow that impulse. They return to the architecture. They do not expect detachment to be comfortable. They expect it to cost something, and they pay. Through stillness, through refusal, through one deliberate act that reestablishes order, the habit remains, not because it is easy, but because it is built. Governance under chaos is not rigidity, it is not denial, it is motion inside clarity. You feel what must be felt, but you do not surrender your post. You sit with grief, but you do not abandon the morning routine. You acknowledge anger, but you do not let it dictate action. You move through uncertainty, but you do not dissolve structure. There is no nobility in collapsing. There is only recovery through motion. The most disciplined people are not those who avoid pain. They are those who maintain order inside it. This is the rare posture, not strength as display, but strength as repetition inside storms. The body remembers what it repeats. If in grief you disappear, the mind will remember that pattern. If in anger you break your law, the nervous system registers that breach. But if in sorrow you rise anyway, even slower, even quieter, the code is reinforced. The mind records that movement under duress and adds weight to the identity. Every emotional crisis is a test of reflex. The untrained panic, the trained breathe, the untrained break protocol, the trained return to it, even partially, even imperfectly. The goal is not perfection, it is continuity. The discipline you build on ordinary days is not wasted. It becomes the anchor during extraordinary ones. When emotion tries to dissolve your outline, it is the outline that holds you in place. You move through the wave without being carried by it. You remain intact. That is governance. Even through collapse, you retain shape. Even through tears, you hold form. Even through noise, the internal law continues to function, and in doing so, you do not just survive, you emerge sharpened. Habit 2, the habit of ruthless prioritization. The Stoics understood that attention is a finite resource. What you attend to, you become. Every thought entertained, every task accepted, every distraction permitted, each shapes the quality of the mind. The disciplined person understands that life does not demand more effort, it demands less waste. The untrained scatter themselves across 1,000 directions, chasing stimulation and mistaking movement for progress. The trained individual cuts, they reduce, they focus their energy on what strengthens their structure and discard everything else. Prioritization is the art of clarity. It is the act of choosing what deserves existence in your limited field of effort. It is not efficiency, it is essence. The mind that knows what to serve no longer fights itself. It moves in one direction. The Stoics viewed this as alignment with reason, the ability to know what is within your control and what is not, what is worth pursuing and what must be left untouched. Without this hierarchy, you are consumed by triviality. Every day must begin with a reckoning. The question is not what you want to do, but what you must protect. Your time, your energy, your attention, these are currencies. If you spend them on the unessential, your life becomes collateral. Prioritization is not about doing everything efficiently. It is about ensuring that only the essential is allowed to exist at all. This is why ruthless prioritization feels severe. It requires saying no to what flatters the ego. It requires ignoring opportunities that do not align with direction. It demands you abandon the illusion that you can have it all. The Stoic mind accepts the boundaries of capacity and uses them as a weapon. Restraint becomes precision. Focus becomes dominion. To live without prioritization is to live under siege. Notifications, obligations, noise, each one steals a fraction of sovereignty. The disciplined person fortifies their life like a fortress. Clear entrances, guarded walls, selective access. Every task must justify its place. Every commitment must prove its worth. What does not serve the mission is neutralized before it consumes attention. Ruthless prioritization begins in the mind. You must see thought itself as territory. The first layer of discipline is to monitor what enters consciousness. Idle speculation, resentment, gossip, envy, all are mental parasites. The Stoics advised constant watchfulness over thought because attention builds identity. You cannot prioritize external life if the internal dialogue is chaotic. Once the mind is guarded, the external world must be ordered. The disciplined individual constructs a hierarchy. At the top, what sustains the mission, strengthens the body, and clears the mind. Beneath that, what maintains stability and integrity. Everything else becomes expendable. Every object, every routine, every conversation is filtered through this scale. The act of cutting creates power. Each removal restores energy. Each refusal creates silence. Through subtraction, the mind regains strength. Most people drown not from lack of time, but from abundance of noise. The one who chooses cleanly will always outpace the one who chooses endlessly. This habit demands more courage than effort. It is easy to do more. It is difficult to do less. The ego finds comfort in busyness. It mistakes volume for significance. But motion without purpose is exhaustion. The Stoic path teaches that focus is a form of virtue. To dedicate yourself to a few things completely is to live as nature intended, with order, discipline, and self-respect. A person who understands prioritization no longer needs to chase balance. They create it by exclusion. Their calendar is a mirror of their values. Their workspace reflects the mind, uncluttered, deliberate, functional. Their relationships are few but meaningful. They do not confuse access with importance. They protect silence like wealth. Ruthless prioritization means setting boundaries that offend those who depend on your distraction. People will resist your clarity because it disrupts their comfort. They will accuse you of selfishness, of arrogance, of detachment. The Stoic does not defend their discipline, they embody it. They understand that to say yes to everything is to betray oneself. Distraction is not just noise, it is theft. Every moment stolen from what matters corrodes integrity. The Stoics warned against the disease of busyness, the addiction to doing without being. Ruthless prioritization cures this disease through elimination. The fewer decisions you make, the stronger each one becomes. The fewer battles you fight, the more likely you are to win the ones that count. To master prioritization is to master time. Time is the true currency of power. Wealth can be regained, reputation can be rebuilt. Time spent is irreversible. The disciplined individual understands this law and behaves accordingly. They guard their hours like soldiers guard gates. They do not squander them on trivial conflict, shallow entertainment, or empty talk. Each day must serve the long arc of purpose. This is the lens through which all action is filtered. Does this task reinforce who I am becoming? Does it advance the mission? Does it maintain the system? If the answer is no, it is erased. Prioritization is the daily act of erasing what does not belong. In the ancient world, Stoics practiced this discipline by design. They reduced possessions, limited speech, and observed silence. They trained themselves to desire less so that focus could expand. The modern parallel is digital. Every device, every platform, every demand for attention is a test. The one who masters attention masters life. Ruthless prioritization is not cruelty, it is clarity. It does not reject out of disdain, but out of necessity. You cannot build depth while entertaining distraction. You cannot create something enduring while constantly dividing your attention. To say no cleanly is to honor what you have already chosen. Success is not the accumulation of actions, it is the elimination of noise. Each refusal is a reinforcement of identity. Each boundary is a statement of intent. Each clean schedule is a map of values. The Stoic understands this. Focus is not gifted, it is enforced. The habit becomes self-sustaining when clarity replaces guilt. The disciplined person no longer apologizes for focus. They no longer explain boundaries. They act according to law, inner law, and move forward without friction. Prioritization is not strategy, it is survival of the essential. When this habit matures, Life simplifies to structure. Each hour is assigned meaning. Each day begins clean and ends complete. There is no overflow, no fragmentation. Time becomes straight, not scattered. The individual no longer reacts to life. They direct it. The Stoic path is not against abundance, it is against chaos. It teaches that power grows in proportion to clarity. The one who knows their aim wastes nothing. The one who wastes nothing rules their life. Ruthless prioritization is the shield of mastery. It turns noise into silence, confusion into order, and potential into precision. Through it, the disciplined person becomes untouchable, focused, immovable, and free. The second layer of this habit begins when clarity becomes defense. Boundaries stop being emotional acts. They become operational. The Stoic no longer weighs every invitation, distraction, or demand. They filter automatically. Their system has matured from conscious effort to reflex. This state is earned through relentless consistency. Every time you say no to what doesn't serve you, the nervous system learns that peace requires protection. Every time you hold the line, the body relaxes into certainty. What once felt restrictive becomes liberating. The fewer directions you chase, the more ground you cover. To maintain this state, one must treat boundaries as living systems. They must be reviewed, strengthened, and adapted. The world changes, priorities evolve, and distractions reappear in new forms. Without maintenance, even the sharpest structure dulls. The disciplined person treats clarity like a blade. It must be cleaned, sharpened, and used with purpose. Emotion will test this system. Guilt will whisper that you owe time to everyone. Fear will suggest that saying no will close doors. Attachment will tempt you to keep what is already finished. Ruthless prioritization cuts through these illusions. Every yes carries a cost. Every emotional compromise steals precision. Every attachment beyond purpose weakens sovereignty. To live by priority is to disappoint comfort. The disciplined accept this as natural. They understand that freedom is never the absence of structure, it is mastery of it. The Stoic accepts the sting of refusal as the price of integrity. Saying no cleanly becomes an act of strength. It stops being defiance, it becomes calibration. No is not rejection, it is redirection. It preserves energy for what aligns with principle. The one who understands this does not feel guilt, they feel order returning. Structure protects emotion from distortion. When you know your direction, you no longer rely on impulse to decide. Each task either fits or it doesn't. Each person either contributes to the mission or drains it. Each environment either supports focus or destroys it. Prioritization becomes the filtration system of identity. This system grows stronger through practice. The mind that once feared missing out begins to feel peace in restraint. The hands that once reached for everything learn stillness. The heart that once sought validation learns satisfaction in simplicity. The reward is not ease, it is clarity. Ruthless prioritization expands beyond productivity. It becomes a moral code. You no longer measure your day by output, but by alignment. You no longer chase variety, you chase depth. You no longer seek more, you seek the few things worth doing well. Life becomes architecture instead of noise. When boundaries are fully integrated, they stop feeling like walls. They feel like direction. They do not block, they guide. They do not limit, they define. You no longer wrestle with distraction. You move through it untouched. The mind is calm, the focus pure, the motion straight. This is the summit of prioritization, when silence replaces confusion, when stillness carries power, when saying no is as natural as breathing. Nothing wasted, nothing forced, everything exact. Ruthless prioritization extends beyond the confines of work and time. It reaches into relationships, loyalty, and the unseen architecture of social energy. The Stoic knows that connection without purpose drains more than it gives. Not all bonds deserve endurance. Not all loyalty is noble. The disciplined person learns to distinguish between companionship that sharpens and company that dulls. To prioritize is to measure alignment. You do not judge people by affection alone, but by resonance with your direction. Some connections fuel clarity, others dilute it. The Stoics spoke often of friendship as shared pursuit of virtue, not shared comfort. Relationships built on distraction, gossip, or mutual indulgence corrode the foundation of focus. Clarity requires selective association. The modern world encourages overexposure. Every device expands the circle of contact until boundaries blur. You must reduce this circle. Each message, each conversation, each invitation costs a fragment of energy. The mind's bandwidth is finite. The disciplined person filters their social inputs with the same precision they apply to their schedule. Attention given to the wrong person is time stolen from the right pursuit. To sustain meaningful relationships, you must first define what meaning means. Loyalty without direction becomes servitude. Compassion without discernment becomes exhaustion. The Stoic offers presence to those who seek growth, not to those who demand comfort. Kindness does not require access. You can wish well without surrendering energy. Prioritization in relationships demands courage. It requires stepping away from groups that no longer align with truth. It requires accepting solitude over shallow inclusion. It requires acknowledging when a bond once built on growth has decayed into routine. The disciplined person chooses distance without resentment. Detachment is not coldness, it is precision in the economy of care. This habit extends to communication itself. Words consume energy. Speech creates weight. The Stoics warned that idle talk diminishes discipline because it weakens the filter between thought and action. Ruthless prioritization trains silence. Speak only when words build, guide, or clarify. The fewer the words, the stronger their gravity. The quieter the life, the clearer the direction. The same logic governs loyalty. Loyalty to principle must always outrank loyalty to people. The Stoic does not follow others into chaos out of affection or obligation. They remain loyal to truth, order, and virtue. When association threatens these, disconnection becomes duty. True friendship can withstand distance because it is built on respect, not dependency. Every relationship, every word, every act of loyalty must reinforce your structure, or it weakens it. Ruthless prioritization demands constant evaluation. Does this alliance sharpen discipline? Does this interaction bring strength or noise? If it brings noise, end it cleanly. The disciplined person releases without bitterness, moves without drama, and guards peace without apology. The courage to remove is rarer than the will to add. Yet removal is what defines mastery. The one who knows how to detach without guilt has learned one of the highest forms of freedom. Through this, prioritization becomes not just a habit, but a philosophy of life, where all motion, connection, and expression align toward a single axis: clarity. Habit 3. The habit of relentless execution. The disciplined individual understands that thought without motion is decay. The Stoics taught that wisdom must be applied, not admired. Knowledge without execution rots into vanity. Reflection without action becomes paralysis. The person who acts transforms theory into structure, insight into strength. Relentless execution is the bridge between intention and reality, the art of moving from clarity to completion without hesitation, without delay. Action is the purest expression of philosophy. The Stoic does not wait for certainty, approval, or ideal conditions. They move. Every motion, every repetition, every decision becomes a statement of alignment. Relentless execution is not aggression. It is precision sustained by discipline. It is the removal of delay between decision and action. Once the path is seen, it is walked immediately. The longer the gap between knowing and doing, the weaker the command of the self. The world belongs to those who move cleanly. Ideas have no power until embodied. Plans remain hollow until acted upon. Each moment of hesitation gives power to inertia. The disciplined person recognizes hesitation as decay. They treat it as corrosion of will. The cure is movement. The moment thought aligns with purpose, action must follow. This reflex builds the architecture of unstoppable momentum. Relentless execution is not chaos or speed. It is consistency under pressure. It is the ability to perform the same act of discipline regardless of emotion. Whether fatigued, uninspired, or unseen, the task is executed. This is the habit that separates those who dream from those who build. It is not the intensity of a single day that matters, but the exact repetition of right action across time. The disciplined mind does not ask how to feel motivated. It asks only what must be done now. The Stoic view of action was clean, motion aligned with reason, detached from outcome. The outcome belongs to fate. The effort belongs to you. Execution becomes its own reward because it keeps you aligned with nature's law, to act well within your sphere. The disciplined individual acts without anxiety because they understand that only execution is controllable. Success or failure are external shadows. The act itself is the victory. In practice, relentless execution means structuring your environment so that movement is inevitable. Systems replace willpower. Rituals replace negotiation. The disciplined person designs a life where the next step is always clear. The desk is clean, the tools are ready, the sequence is known. Execution becomes instinct because every barrier to motion has been removed. Where most people spend time deciding, the Stoic is already moving. Each day becomes a test of endurance, not inspiration. The body obeys the law of repetition. The mind follows the clarity of system. The emotions learn silence through obedience. Over time, execution becomes identity. The reflex to act replaces the tendency to hesitate. There is no debate, no internal argument, only movement in accordance with structure. To execute relentlessly requires comfort with imperfection. The disciplined person does not demand perfect timing, resources, or understanding before acting. They know that motion refines clarity, not the other way around. The untrained mind waits for readiness. The trained mind understands that readiness is earned in motion. The Stoic initiates action while others are still contemplating the difficulty of the path. Execution without pause creates momentum. Momentum eliminates resistance. Each completed task reinforces self-trust. Each repetition engraves identity. The one who executes without fail begins to experience life as flow, an unbroken rhythm of decision and completion. This rhythm creates confidence beyond emotion, beyond circumstance. It is not enthusiasm, it is law. Relentless execution also requires neutrality. The Stoic acts without pride in success or despair in failure. Both are noise. What matters is the continuity of effort. When results fluctuate, the disciplined person remains steady. The external world does not dictate their energy. Their power is internal, drawn from the ritual of completion itself. They rise each morning to execute, not to achieve applause, but to remain in command of themselves. True execution is simple: decide, act, adjust, repeat. The mind complicates what is simple because it fears the loss of control. But the one who understands Stoic execution knows that control exists only in motion. Stillness without intent is stagnation. Movement directed by reason is mastery. Every day becomes a laboratory of discipline. You act, observe, refine. You measure progress not by distance covered, but by the absence of hesitation. Each small completion is a victory of will over resistance. Each fulfilled promise is evidence of integrity. Over time, you stop relying on emotion entirely. You act because that is who you are. This habit does not seek perfection, it seeks purity of effort. The disciplined person removes waste from action. No dramatics, no complaints, no indulgence. Each motion is clean. The work is done without spectacle. The results speak through endurance. Relentless execution is quiet power, the kind that does not announce itself, yet cannot be ignored. The Stoics spoke of aligning with nature. In practice, this means acting without delay, because hesitation opposes life. Nature moves continuously. It never debates its course. Rivers flow, seasons turn. The disciplined person mirrors this rhythm, steady, unbroken, silent in purpose. They do not start and stop according to emotion. They move until finished. Execution is an act of self-respect. Every task completed as promised strengthens trust within. Every delay or excuse fractures it. The one who executes relentlessly develops a reputation with themselves. They can be relied upon. This internal credibility becomes the foundation for all external success. Without it, no talent, knowledge, or opportunity can be sustained. To master this habit, you must replace the question, "Can I?" with "Will I?" and then remove even that question. Decision collapses into action. The mind becomes an engine of movement. The body becomes an instrument of command. The gap between knowing and doing disappears. This is the apex of discipline, the moment when thought and execution are one. Relentless execution is not about aggression against the world. It is alignment within it. It is the absence of inner conflict. The disciplined person moves with quiet inevitability. They do not rush, but they do not pause. They work with precision, rest with intention, and return to motion as naturally as breath. Every action, however small, carries the full weight of will. When this habit matures, work becomes meditation, action becomes stillness. The mind ceases to fragment between planning and doing. There is only direction and continuation. Each task, each repetition, each movement becomes part of a single continuum. The life of the disciplined person, unfolding exactly as designed. This is the nature of relentless execution, when doing replaces doubt, when discipline outlasts emotion, when consistency becomes identity. The Stoic does not need promise or praise. They only need the next command, and they obey it, without hesitation, without resistance, without end. Endurance begins when comfort ends. The disciplined person reaches the point of fatigue, not as a signal to stop, but as a summons to strengthen. Fatigue is the threshold where most falter, where emotion starts negotiating with the will. The Stoic knows that this is the proving ground, the narrow passage between impulse and mastery. In this space, excuses dissolve and identity is forged. Physical fatigue tests clarity first. The body sends signals of limitation, but the mind must decide whether to accept them. The trained individual understands that exhaustion is often noise, a language of resistance, not reality. They listen without obedience. They adjust the rhythm, control the breath, and continue. Every repetition under fatigue carves discipline into the nervous system. Every completion under strain rewrites what the body believes is possible. Mental fatigue is quieter but more corrosive. It erodes sharpness and tempts compromise. The disciplined person anticipates this decay and counters it through structure. They fall back on systems, not emotion. They rely on sequence when clarity fades. Even when the mind dulls, the pattern holds. This is the advantage of system. When thought weakens, the body continues the design. Routine becomes survival. Emotional fatigue comes disguised as apathy, the sense that nothing matters enough to merit effort. The Stoic meets this not with inspiration, but with principle. They act out of law, not feeling. They return to their code and execute the next necessary step. They understand that meaning is not recovered through contemplation, but through motion. To act is to renew purpose. The wheel turns again, and fatigue begins to lose its hold. Endurance through fatigue requires detachment from sensation. Pain, boredom, doubt, all become signals, not obstacles. The disciplined person learns to read them as data points. Fatigue is information about the system, not a command to stop. The body reports, the mind interprets, the will decides. When fatigue is stripped of authority, it becomes part of the environment, not the ruler of it. There are moments when the exhaustion becomes total, when the limbs feel leaden, when focus splinters, when the thought of continuing feels absurd. These moments reveal the depth of training. The Stoic draws from stillness, not emotion. They tighten the breath, simplify the motion, and return to the smallest actionable step. Progress reduces to precision. One clean repetition, one honest movement, one fulfilled promise. Momentum rebuilds from silence. Relentless execution in fatigue is not about defiance. It is about endurance through control. The Stoic does not rage against difficulty. They adjust to it. They regulate pace, not purpose. They shrink the horizon without breaking direction. Fatigue becomes part of the design, a recurring condition to be mastered, not feared. Endurance deepens when the mind stops labeling hardship as suffering. What most call pain, the disciplined person calls process. What most resist, they integrate. Fatigue becomes neutral, a texture within the work. Once it loses moral weight, it loses power. The body continues because there is no debate left to win. The longer fatigue is endured with precision, the quieter it becomes. The mind adapts to the strain. The nervous system learns that exhaustion is survivable. The body stops pleading for ease. It begins to obey. The self expands to contain discomfort instead of avoiding it. This is how resilience hardens into peace. The Stoics saw endurance as elegance, the art of maintaining composure under weight. To move cleanly through fatigue is to prove mastery. Every step in exhaustion counts double, for it is action extracted from resistance itself. Each moment past comfort is worth 100 within it. The disciplined person welcomes this stage, knowing it refines what cannot be taught, an identity that endures beyond condition. This is endurance under fatigue, calm within strain, stillness within motion, completion within exhaustion. It is not dramatic, it is deliberate. The body trembles, the will remains, and as long as one step remains possible, the work continues. Habit 4. The habit of emotional mastery. The Stoics taught that the greatest power lies in the ability to remain unmoved, to command emotion without suppressing it, to feel fully without being led astray. This is mastery. The disciplined individual does not seek to become emotionless. They seek to become sovereign over their internal world. Emotion exists, but it obeys. Feelings arise, but they do not rule. The mind remains the axis. Emotional mastery begins with awareness. You cannot control what you refuse to see. The undisciplined react, the disciplined observe. A wave of anger, fear, or frustration rises, but instead of merging with it, the Stoic watches. Observation creates distance, and distance gives control. You are not the emotion, you are the one who perceives it. The moment you recognize this distinction, you stop being a victim of inner weather. To master emotion is to separate stimulus from response. Every event triggers an instinct, but instinct is not command. Between the two lies the space of reason. The Stoic lives in that space. They allow the first reaction to pass through the body without acting upon it. The body tenses, the heart accelerates, the breath shortens, and yet the will remains still. From that stillness, they decide how to act, not how to react. The untrained mind collapses under emotional pressure because it has no distance between feeling and behavior. It believes that to feel something is to become it. The disciplined mind learns to stand in the fire without burning. It allows emotion to exist without distortion. Anger becomes information, not command. Fear becomes signal, not paralysis. Sadness becomes reflection, not decay. Emotion, when mastered, transforms from enemy into instrument. This discipline requires constant training. The mind must be conditioned to hold space for discomfort without collapse. Each emotional surge becomes a weight to be lifted. The more you face, the more capacity you build. Where others panic, you slow. Where others lash out, you study. Where others drown, you breathe deeper. The world does not soften for you. You harden for the world. Stoic emotional mastery does not reject feeling, it refines it. The goal is not numbness, but equilibrium. When joy comes, it is accepted calmly. When pain comes, it is endured cleanly. The disciplined person remains centered through both, because their identity no longer depends on external circumstance. Pleasure and pain lose their power to distort direction. Emotion becomes part of experience, not the master of it. The practice begins with control of breath. Breath anchors reason in moments of turbulence. When emotion floods the system, the body reacts before thought can intervene. The breath reclaims control. Slow, measured inhalation signals to the nervous system that the storm will pass. Exhalation grounds the will. The disciplined individual breathes as an act of command, turning physiology into philosophy. From breath comes posture. The Stoic keeps the body still under pressure because motion often amplifies emotion. Anger fuels movement. Anxiety seeks escape. Stillness breaks these loops. When the body refuses to act impulsively, the mind follows. Stillness becomes signal, an embodied command that the system will not fracture. This stillness is not cold detachment, it is composure under weight. It is the calm that precedes decisive motion. Emotional mastery does not mean endless restraint, it means control over timing. The disciplined person acts only when their decision is pure, when the emotional residue has cleared. Every action taken in composure carries 10 times the precision of one taken in haste. In conflict, this control becomes visible. The Stoic listens while others shout. They observe tone, posture, and silence more than words. They measure before responding. They do not compete for dominance, they establish it through calm. The untrained mistake this stillness for passivity. It is not passivity, it is supremacy of will. To remain unmoved when provoked is to demonstrate absolute control. This mastery extends beyond anger or conflict. It applies to anxiety, despair, and loss. The Stoic feels deeply, but their clarity remains. They do not hide emotion behind pride. They experience it fully and still decide correctly. Emotional mastery is not resistance to life's changes. It is motion through them without distortion. The disciplined person recognizes that emotion is energy. Energy can be converted. Anger becomes fuel for action. Fear becomes preparation. Grief becomes perspective. Instead of wasting emotion through reaction, they transmute it into movement. This is the alchemy of discipline, the transformation of feeling into force. Each emotion becomes an opportunity to train control. When irritation arises, breathe. When anxiety tightens, slow. When sorrow strikes, hold still. Every act of restraint strengthens command. Every moment of observation reinforces authority. Over time, the nervous system learns to follow reason instead of reflex. The storm passes, but the center remains. There will be days when composure fails, when the weight becomes too heavy, when emotion breaks through. The Stoic does not collapse into guilt. They recover quickly. Failure is data. It reveals the point where control must strengthen. Mastery is not the absence of emotion, but the rapid restoration of order after disturbance. The speed of return defines progress. To maintain this balance, the disciplined individual must live in alignment with reason. Emotional chaos thrives in contradiction. When you live against your values, guilt and shame follow, and emotion multiplies. Integrity is emotional insulation. The one who acts according to principle carries less inner noise. Their peace is not circumstantial, it is structural. The highest form of emotional mastery is neutrality, not indifference, but freedom from dependency. Praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain, all lose their ability to alter the inner state. The mind remains in its own temperature. This neutrality does not make life dull, it makes it stable. Joy feels cleaner, pain feels clearer. Nothing is exaggerated, nothing is denied. Everything is processed in proportion. To reach this level, the Stoic continually observes the chain of reaction: thought, sensation, impulse, action. They interrupt the chain before impulse turns into behavior. With time, this becomes reflex. Emotion arises, but it does not erupt. It is seen, named, and neutralized. The body follows the law of the mind. The system functions under command. Emotional mastery transforms how the disciplined person interacts with the world. They no longer demand control over others or circumstances. Their control ends where their influence ends. They focus entirely on their own reactions, their own interpretations. This focus brings serenity. They are no longer exhausted by what they cannot command. They spend their power where it matters, within. The Stoic does not expect the absence of pain or provocation. They expect the opportunity to demonstrate composure. Every challenge becomes a stage for refinement. The harder the test, the deeper the calm required. Emotional mastery is proven not in peace, but in chaos. To remain silent when insulted, steady when threatened, compassionate when wronged, that is strength. Over time, this discipline alters perception itself. The world appears less hostile because the observer no longer reacts with fear. Other people's anger loses its contagion. Injustice no longer provokes despair, only action. The mind ceases to label everything as good or bad. It simply sees cause and consequence. Peace emerges not from circumstance, but from perspective. The Stoic carries this peace everywhere. In loss, they are composed. In success, they are balanced. In solitude, they are whole. They no longer chase stability, they embody it. The storms of life continue, but their center holds. Emotional mastery becomes the quiet gravity that orders everything around it. This is the essence of control, not suppression, not denial, but sovereignty. The mind commands, the body obeys, emotion serves. Through this harmony, the disciplined person becomes untouchable, moving through life with calm certainty, unmoved by chaos, unshaken by praise, unbroken by pain. Emotional mastery matures when emotion itself becomes fuel. The disciplined person no longer treats anger, fear, or sadness as enemies to suppress, but as energy to direct. Emotion loses its volatility when given purpose. It ceases to distort action and begins to strengthen it. The Stoic understands that power lies not in avoiding feeling, but in commanding where that feeling is applied. Anger, when stripped of impulse, becomes precision. It reveals what violates principle and converts that recognition into focus. Instead of reacting, the disciplined individual channels the signal of injustice or disorder into correction. The mind remains calm while the energy moves towards structure. In this form, anger does not destroy. It builds. Fear becomes awareness. It sharpens perception, reveals potential weaknesses, and demands preparation. The untrained collapse under it. The disciplined extract information from it. Fear no longer limits them, it refines them. The Stoic acknowledges it as part of the system, not a threat to it. It sharpens the mind without steering it. Grief becomes perspective. Loss exposes impermanence and clarifies value. The disciplined person does not resist grief. They experience it without collapse. The pain of absence reorders priorities, removing illusions of control or permanence. In this clarity, focus strengthens. Grief becomes the measure of what truly matters. Joy is refined into gratitude rather than indulgence. The disciplined enjoy without dependency. They accept pleasure fully, yet it does not own them. Joy becomes a reminder of harmony, not an excuse for complacency. It sustains energy without diffusing it. The Stoic remains centered whether joy stays or leaves. Every emotion becomes part of a single operating system: input, observation, conversion, action. Nothing is wasted. The disciplined individual no longer judges feelings as good or bad. They measure them by utility. What can be learned, what can be directed, what can be reinforced. Emotion becomes information. Information becomes motion. This conversion process requires discipline at every stage. Awareness prevents reaction. Observation replaces interpretation. Conversion demands deliberate choice. Each emotion must be processed through reason before expression. The untrained express first and think later. The trained think first and act once. This reverses the order of chaos. To maintain this habit, the Stoic treats emotion as data. Anger signals injustice. Fear signals unpreparedness. Sadness signals attachment. Envy signals misalignment of values. Each signal leads to adjustment, not eruption. The system remains operational. The emotion is not an obstacle, but a message. Over time, this constant conversion builds a new emotional architecture. Feelings still arise, but they pass through layers of clarity before reaching the surface. The nervous system no longer reacts instantly. It defers to reason. The mind holds its shape even under stress. This is not suppression, it is reconfiguration. When emotion becomes function, the disciplined person achieves inner efficiency. No energy is wasted, no feeling is lost. Every surge of intensity fuels direction. This precision removes the chaos that drains ordinary minds. The Stoic becomes capable of continuous motion under pressure because they are never divided internally. The power of this habit lies in neutrality. The individual feels everything but is owned by nothing. Emotion feeds the will but does not steer it. The energy that once fueled reaction now sustains execution. The disciplined person uses every emotion as reinforcement for the system rather than disruption of it. This is emotional transmutation in its simplest form: anger converted to focus, fear to preparation, grief to perspective, joy to balance. Each feeling fulfills its purpose and moves through. Nothing lingers, nothing clings. The internal world remains clean. The result is composure that cannot be broken by intensity. In this state, emotion no longer threatens the mission, it powers it. The Stoic moves through life with steady momentum, each wave of feeling adding strength instead of taking it. The system is closed, efficient, complete. Emotion exists to serve direction. The person who masters this process no longer struggles with their inner life. They command it. Habit 5. The habit of strategic focus and execution. Focus is the consolidation of power. The disciplined person knows that scattered attention weakens every form of strength. Strategic focus is not intensity without direction. It is the precise alignment of purpose, plan, and execution. To live effectively, one must organize effort like a strategist, not a laborer. The Stoic understands that focus is not only mental, it is structural. It shapes the architecture of every decision and defines how power is deployed. Strategic focus begins with clarity of aim. The undisciplined drift between interests, reacting to what demands attention. The disciplined individual defines one primary direction and filters every decision through it. This focus does not depend on emotion or opportunity. It is a fixed axis around which the rest of life rotates. Without this axis, even effort becomes wasteful. Motion without strategy exhausts the strong and blinds the intelligent. To sustain focus, the Stoic establishes hierarchy. Each goal serves a higher principle. Each task reinforces a central aim. The disciplined person orders their life like a military campaign. Every move is measured, every expenditure justified. Distraction is treated as infiltration. They understand that attention is territory. Whoever controls it, controls you. Therefore, they protect it as one guards a fortress. Strategic execution demands systems, not wishes. The Stoic creates processes that operate independently of mood. Systems reduce reliance on emotion, ensuring progress even when inspiration fades. A system is discipline embodied, clear routines, defined metrics, consistent review. Each day feeds into the next with precision. The disciplined person does not ask whether they feel ready. The structure carries them regardless. Focus also requires deliberate exclusion. The mind cannot serve multiple masters. Strategic living demands constant elimination of what dilutes direction. Every yes must be defended with 1,000 no's. The disciplined individual recognizes that attention spent on the trivial is energy stolen from the essential. The goal is not to do more, but to direct every resource toward what sustains growth and integrity. The Stoic divides time as a general divides forces. Mornings for creation, afternoons for execution, evenings for review. Each segment has purpose, each hour a task. Randomness is removed. The calendar becomes a declaration of values. In this structure, freedom expands rather than contracts. The disciplined person is not imprisoned by schedule. They are liberated by order. Chaos wastes energy. Order concentrates it. Strategic focus extends beyond time management. It governs how decisions are made. The Stoic relies on principle rather than impulse. They assess choices through filters, alignment with mission, cost to integrity, and long-term consequence. Emotion may speak, but it does not vote. Each decision is weighed for its impact on the overall structure. If it weakens the system, it is rejected without hesitation. To maintain execution under complexity, the disciplined mind simplifies constantly. Simplicity is not weakness, it is refinement. Each unnecessary layer of thought, each extra variable, each redundant motion is a source of friction. The Stoic removes it. Focus thrives on simplicity because simplicity preserves energy. The fewer decisions required, the more precision each one carries. Strategic execution thrives on feedback. The Stoic reviews results without emotion, studies failure without defense, and adjusts without pride. Each cycle of reflection sharpens direction. Error becomes information. Success becomes confirmation. Progress becomes inevitable. The disciplined person sees reflection as maintenance of focus, not indulgence in regret. To act strategically is to accept responsibility for attention. The Stoic refuses to blame distraction, circumstance, or others for broken focus. Every lapse in clarity is reclaimed through awareness. The mind is reset through deliberate stillness. Focus is restored by returning to principle. This self-correction is constant. Small adjustments prevent major deviation. Strategic focus also governs relationships. The disciplined individual surrounds themselves with those who reinforce direction, not dilute it. Association becomes selective. Conversation becomes purposeful. Collaboration exists only where it strengthens the mission. The Stoic sees loyalty as shared alignment, not shared comfort. They guard proximity as tightly as they guard time. Execution without reflection becomes mechanical. Reflection without execution becomes paralysis. Strategic focus unites both. The disciplined person acts with calculation and reviews with detachment. Each cycle of planning and doing becomes shorter until it merges into one continuous rhythm. Observe, decide, act, refine. The result is momentum that cannot be disrupted by external noise. In modern life, distraction is disguised as productivity. Endless messages, meetings, and information loops mimic motion while producing nothing. The Stoic breaks this illusion. They measure progress by completion, not activity. Each day has a clear endpoint. Each task is either done or unnecessary. Strategic focus replaces busyness with accuracy. Focus requires endurance. The mind fatigues under prolonged concentration. The disciplined person alternates between deep immersion and deliberate recovery. Rest is not escape, it is recalibration. The Stoic does not confuse rest with idleness. They recover to return sharper, not to withdraw from effort. Energy management becomes part of execution. When strategic focus matures, it feels like stillness in motion. The mind no longer fragments between past, present, and future. Everything converges into a single thread of attention directed by purpose. The Stoic experiences time as sequence, not chaos. Each action fits into a larger order. Each moment reinforces control. This habit transforms the individual into an operator rather than a participant. They no longer react to life, they orchestrate it. Focused thought precedes efficient motion. Every part of the system serves the whole. When emotion rises, it is harnessed. When distraction appears, it is neutralized. Nothing moves without reason. Strategic focus and execution combine intellect, discipline, and structure into one functioning force. This force does not depend on motivation, approval, or luck. It functions through clarity and repetition. The Stoic becomes the architect of their time, the commander of their energy, and the executor of their design. At full strength, this habit creates momentum that feels self-sustaining. The mind moves from planning to doing without friction. Systems operate like extensions of will. Direction is clear, resistance minimal. The disciplined person lives as a strategist of the self, precise, deliberate, and unstoppable. Long-term focus begins with the acceptance of uncertainty as a constant condition. The Stoic does not demand clarity about the future. They demand stability of direction regardless of it. The disciplined individual understands that the absence of certainty does not justify hesitation. Action continues. Systems remain active. Strategy adapts, but purpose stays fixed. The mind trained in long-term focus learns to separate control from prediction. You cannot control outcomes. You can control preparation and persistence. The untrained rely on motivation and clarity. The disciplined rely on process. When uncertainty rises, the undisciplined change course. The Stoic holds position and adjusts only when reason dictates, not emotion. Strategic patience is the ability to endure the delay between effort and visible result. Many abandon their course because progress cannot be immediately verified. The disciplined person measures consistency, not outcome. They understand that unseen work compounds quietly. Time is not an obstacle, it is a multiplier. The one who continues under doubt eventually surpasses those who required reassurance. To sustain long-term focus, the Stoic reduces dependence on external validation. Praise and recognition weaken consistency by shifting focus outward. The disciplined person anchors validation in effort itself. They execute daily without requiring evidence of success. The absence of reward does not alter the schedule. The system continues because the law of consistency overrides emotion. Adaptation under uncertainty requires mental flexibility within principled boundaries. The Stoic adjusts tactics without corrupting principles. They modify approach without changing aim. This distinction preserves integrity. They do not interpret change as failure, but as recalibration. Every adjustment is a controlled act, not a reaction to pressure. Focus remains stable because it is built on reasoning, not on approval. Strategic endurance is built by structuring goals across different timescales. The disciplined person maintains daily, seasonal, and lifetime horizons simultaneously. The daily horizon governs immediate execution. The seasonal horizon measures system effectiveness. The lifetime horizon defines direction. These layers prevent collapse under short-term volatility. The Stoic moves calmly between them, adjusting scope while maintaining order. Uncertainty tests attention. It introduces noise and unpredictability. The Stoic counters this by increasing clarity of process. When the future is unclear, structure becomes protection. The disciplined individual doubles down on fundamentals, consistent wake times, clean routines, deliberate review. Structure replaces prediction. Through repetition, the mind regains equilibrium. The Stoic also practices detachment from pace. Progress may accelerate or stall, but direction remains. They no longer measure advancement by speed. The disciplined person measures alignment. To remain on the correct path under slow conditions is still success. The mind stays forward-facing, unaffected by temporary outcomes. This is not passivity. It is endurance guided by reason. Strategic focus under uncertainty demands constant simplification. The more variables you attempt to control, the more mental friction accumulates. The Stoic limits their concern to what can be executed daily. They do not speculate beyond evidence. They plan for probability, not possibility. This discipline of simplification removes confusion and keeps momentum intact. Habit 6. The habit of controlled adaptability. The Stoic understands that control is not rigidity. Discipline must be flexible enough to endure the variability of life. Controlled adaptability is the ability to adjust without collapse, to bend without breaking, to modify method without losing principle. It is the expression of reason under change, the mind's capacity to remain ordered while the environment shifts. Adaptability begins with perception. The untrained person resists change out of fear, while the disciplined person studies it. Observation precedes adjustment. The Stoic does not react to change impulsively. They examine its cause, measure its consequence, and determine whether it demands action or endurance. Control is maintained through understanding. Reaction without comprehension is instability. Mental adaptability requires the ability to detach from attachment. When conditions alter, the disciplined mind does not mourn what was lost. It recalculates what remains. Emotion is acknowledged but not obeyed. The Stoic recognizes that every plan must be provisional. The strategy is constant. The form is temporary. When new information appears, reason integrates it without resistance. The principle remains while the path evolves. Strategic adaptability functions through systems. The disciplined person builds structures that can be adjusted without destruction. A rigid plan fails when variables change. A structured system adapts. The Stoic creates frameworks that hold under pressure because they are designed for modification. Routine is maintained, but its form may shift. The strength of a system lies not in its inflexibility, but in its ability to sustain direction under new conditions. Emotional adaptability preserves composure in transition. The disciplined individual accepts uncertainty without agitation. They maintain calm when outcomes diverge from expectation. The Stoic does not interpret change as loss of control, but as a neutral condition requiring new calibration. Emotional steadiness under change allows rational adjustment to occur. Panic dissolves reason. Calm sustains it. Controlled adaptability depends on continuous assessment. The Stoic reviews the effectiveness of their actions without pride or fear. When a method ceases to function, it is replaced. When a structure proves effective, it is reinforced. This constant feedback loop prevents stagnation. Adaptation becomes a cycle of learning, not an act of desperation. The disciplined person distinguishes between core principles and variable strategies. Core principles, integrity, discipline, focus, are unalterable. Variable strategies, methods, tools, processes are expendable. Confusing the two leads to failure. The Stoic holds the principle like an anchor and allows the strategy to move with the current. This balance maintains both direction and survival. Adaptability requires humility. The mind must admit that prior assumptions can become outdated. The Stoic sees correction as refinement, not defeat. To adapt is to evolve reasoning according to truth. The disciplined person does not protect ego at the expense of progress. They adjust quietly and continue forward without commentary. The ability to revise thought is a form of intellectual strength. Controlled adaptability also involves measured timing. Adjustment made too early is reaction. Adjustment made too late is rigidity. The Stoic waits for sufficient evidence before altering course. They act neither from impatience nor fear of loss. Timing becomes a matter of precision. The disciplined person maintains readiness for change without craving it. Adaptability under pressure requires composure. When external systems collapse, the Stoic returns to inner law. When plans fail, principles guide reconstruction. This habit ensures continuity under chaos. The disciplined person remains functional even when surrounded by disorder. Their stability becomes independent of external predictability. To cultivate this habit, one must train detachment from outcomes. The Stoic acts according to process, not result. When results shift, process persists. This allows for calm reorientation. Success and failure are treated as data, not identity. Each outcome informs the next iteration. Adaptability transforms experience into continual improvement. Controlled adaptability integrates awareness, evaluation, and recalibration. Awareness perceives change accurately. Evaluation measures its relevance. Recalibration adjusts system or action in proportion to need. This triad operates continuously, keeping the disciplined individual aligned while flexible. There is no panic, only adjustment. The Stoic measures adaptability by efficiency of recovery. The speed with which order is restored after disruption defines control. Recovery without residue, without emotional fragmentation or wasted motion, is the mark of trained flexibility. The disciplined person moves from disturbance to equilibrium with minimal friction. Adaptability does not mean compromise. The Stoic adapts structure, not standards. Principles remain intact through change. They do not bend integrity to convenience. They bend methods to preserve function. This distinction protects character while ensuring progress. The disciplined person moves cleanly through evolving conditions because their values do not depend on stability. In long sequences of uncertainty, adaptability becomes endurance in motion. The Stoic sustains progress by accepting the fluid nature of reality. They understand that permanence is an illusion. Adjustment is the law of function. By aligning with this law, they eliminate frustration. Adaptation becomes a natural extension of discipline rather than a deviation from it. The disciplined mind sees adaptability as refinement of order. Each change reveals weakness in system design. Each adjustment strengthens structure. The process never ends. The Stoic does not seek final stability, only continuous alignment. Their aim is not to predict every condition, but to remain capable under any condition. When this habit matures, adaptability merges with identity. The person no longer fears change, because change has become familiar territory. They move through transition with the same calm precision they apply to routine. Flexibility and structure coexist without conflict. The result is permanence through adaptability, control that evolves rather than resists. Habit 7. The habit of inner expansion and continuity. The Stoic path does not end with control, it extends into continuity. Discipline is not a phase, it is a permanent mode of existence that evolves without interruption. The final habit is the maintenance of growth itself, the ability to sustain order, clarity, and strength beyond achievement. Inner expansion means that progress no longer depends on external goals. Continuity means that progress does not collapse under completion. Together they form the state of perpetual discipline. The disciplined person learns that mastery is not a single event, but an ongoing condition. To remain strong, one must continue to train even after results appear. The Stoic does not rest on prior achievement, because stillness without purpose decays into complacency. They move forward without chasing novelty, refining what already works. Each day repeats the same principles with higher precision. Repetition becomes evolution. Continuity is sustained through self-observation. The disciplined individual studies their own patterns with the same clarity they once studied external challenges. They identify where focus fades, where emotion intrudes, where structure loosens. This observation prevents regression. Awareness replaces arrogance. The Stoic maintains order not by assuming permanence, but by renewing it continuously. Inner expansion is achieved by deepening understanding rather than expanding activity. The Stoic learns to extract more meaning from fewer actions. Each habit, each decision, each moment of restraint carries greater clarity. The mind stops seeking new systems and begins refining existing ones. Simplicity matures into depth. What once required discipline becomes natural law. The disciplined person learns to hold progress without attachment. They do not turn growth into pride or identity into display. Every achievement is integrated quietly, absorbed into normal operation. There is no need for proof or recognition. The Stoic views advancement as maintenance of alignment. The standard remains internal, the movement continuous. Continuity also requires deliberate reflection. The Stoic sets time aside not for nostalgia, but for recalibration. Reflection is used to test alignment between principle and practice. If deviation is detected, correction is immediate. This constant verification prevents decay. The system remains alive through attention. Inner expansion strengthens the quality of perception. The disciplined mind sees more clearly because noise has been reduced. Reactions decrease, analysis sharpens, decision-making accelerates. The Stoic no longer wastes energy on conflict between feeling and reason. The mind functions as a unified instrument, each part supporting the other without friction. Continuity under challenge is the highest form of discipline. When external conditions fluctuate, the Stoic remains in rhythm. Routine adapts but does not fracture. The daily structure endures even in adversity. This habit turns external chaos into an environment for refinement. Each disturbance becomes another opportunity to reaffirm stability. The disciplined person no longer measures growth by expansion of control, but by reduction of disturbance. They have mastered reaction, focus, and adaptability. The next stage is preservation. The Stoic now works to maintain clarity indefinitely. Maintenance becomes the new creation. The inner system is kept sharp through consistent use. Inner expansion also means extending mastery into silence. The Stoic no longer needs constant effort to feel strong. The structure of discipline becomes self-sustaining. Stillness itself becomes productive. The mind holds order even when inactive. This is the arrival at stable composure, strength without strain. Continuity depends on rhythm. The Stoic alternates between action and reflection, between exertion and restoration. They understand that rest is part of discipline when it serves recovery rather than indulgence. Their energy cycles remain controlled. Their habits remain intact. There is no loss between phases. Movement and stillness form one process. The disciplined person integrates all prior habits into a single identity. Clarity directs focus. Focus sustains execution. Execution refines emotion. Emotional mastery stabilizes adaptability. Adaptability ensures continuity. Each habit reinforces the next in a closed system. The Stoic does not switch between them. They operate as one unbroken discipline. Inner expansion also includes acceptance of limitation. The Stoic understands that life will always include change, fatigue, and imperfection. Mastery is not exemption from difficulty, but competence within it. The disciplined person no longer demands ease. They demand coherence. Whatever occurs, their internal structure holds. This constancy defines permanence. The mature Stoic ceases to depend on momentum for motivation. Their system sustains itself through principle. Effort remains consistent whether progress is visible or not. The need for validation has been erased. Continuity no longer requires reinforcement from success. It is sustained by identity alone. This habit closes the circle of discipline. The Stoic begins with self-control and ends with self-sufficiency. External conditions become irrelevant. The individual functions by internal law, guided by reason, stabilized by clarity. Change continues, but disturbance ends. Growth becomes continuous, and discipline becomes peace. The final stage of mastery is quiet continuation. No announcement, no ceremony, no collapse. Each day fulfills its law. Each action reinforces identity. Each moment aligns with principle. The Stoic lives in uninterrupted command, a steady line of motion defined by composure and integrity. When this habit is complete, the disciplined person no longer strives to become. They simply are. Discipline has merged with nature. Continuity has become self-evident. The mind is stable, the will exact, the life ordered. This is the state of inner expansion and continuity, the point where mastery no longer requires effort, only maintenance. The path of the Stoic begins with awareness and ends with unity. Each habit is a stage in the same movement, the construction of a self that can sustain its own law. Discipline evolves from external correction to internal permanence. When the 7 habits mature together, the individual no longer divides life into areas of improvement. Every action becomes an expression of the same principle, control of the self according to reason. Focus gives direction to discipline. Execution gives discipline form. Emotional mastery refines it. Strategic structure organizes it. Adaptability protects it. Continuity preserves it. Each habit reinforces the next. Together they eliminate conflict between thought, emotion, and action. The result is coherence, the condition in which every part of life functions under a single unified command. The Stoic recognizes that mastery cannot depend on condition or mood. It must persist through all change. The habits exist to make discipline self-sufficient. Once established, they operate without external reinforcement. The system sustains itself through consistency, review, and refinement. Motivation becomes irrelevant. The individual no longer needs to feel disciplined, they simply are. Integration transforms routine into identity. What begins as deliberate effort becomes reflex. The mind no longer negotiates with distraction or emotion. Decisions occur within the boundaries of principle. This removes waste and friction. Each choice reinforces structure. Each day renews the same direction. Over time, stability replaces effort. Continuity is the highest expression of discipline. The Stoic no longer measures progress by visible achievement, but by the absence of deviation. The aim is not to reach a peak, but to maintain alignment. Every cycle of success and difficulty becomes part of the same process. The individual acts according to inner law, regardless of result. This is freedom within discipline. When the 7 habits operate together, the person becomes both strategist and executor, observer and actor, student and teacher of themselves. There is no separation between planning and action, between reason and instinct. Each level of the self follows the same order. This creates internal peace without passivity, calm that moves, strength that does not announce itself. The system remains alive through deliberate renewal. Reflection ensures correction. Simplicity prevents distortion. Consistency replaces excess. The disciplined person maintains the same clarity in success and in obscurity. They do not drift with emotion or outcome. Their conduct remains clean because it is grounded in structure, not circumstance. The Stoic path does not promise ease. It promises stability within difficulty. The 7 habits exist to ensure that when external control fails, internal control continues. The disciplined individual accepts that uncertainty will persist, but disorder will not. Each day becomes an exercise in verification, action aligned with reason, reaction refined into choice. As the habits deepen, discipline ceases to feel like effort. It becomes equilibrium. The person no longer alternates between control and loss of control. They exist in sustained order. The mind is clear, the actions exact, the emotional field balanced. What once required willpower now functions automatically. Mastery has become maintenance. This is the state toward which Stoicism points, a life governed by reason, stabilized by repetition, refined by self-observation. The 7 habits do not end. They continue as one unbroken movement of clarity and command. The disciplined person lives as a system of order functioning in a disordered world. Their peace is not withdrawal, it is precision in motion. When the cycle is complete, the Stoic does not seek to ascend further. They sustain. They remain constant. The law within replaces every need for external direction. Action, thought, and emotion align under one control. Discipline becomes nature. The person becomes whole.